squad led by AOC and Ilhan Omar, etc., had clearly expanded into a broad squadron of Jew-hating, Israel-hating anti-Semites and fellow traveling acolytes in Congress. Today, a few years on, the Democrat Party has been swallowed up completely by the radical anti-Semitic and anti-Israel left.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Hello from Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and human rights author of 325 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including IBM and the Holocaust, War Against the Weak, and my latest scoop book, Israel Strikes Iran, as well as a bold new 15th anniversary edition of Nazi Nexus, just releasing. Ours is a show for opinion makers and decision makers, not mass clicks. Subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, we truly need your assistance. Please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. We can't do this alone, folks. Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support and keep us independent. Today's episode is made possible and sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by my bold new 15th anniversary edition of Nazi Nexus, available everywhere across the planet in 12 paperback, hardback, electronic, and audiobook editions, and it's co-sponsored by a nice guy on Long Island. That said, remember, I only speak for myself, and the same goes for any of my guests. Today, we welcome viewers from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the villages, Newton, Mass., Chicago, and Tampa Bay. Overseas, I see viewers logged on from most of our usuals. I have Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain, Canada, of course, Germany, Holland, France, Italy, Poland, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, our big one in Panama, and Israel, plus other countries. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, speaks frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present, very, very tense, and a turbulent future, still uncertain. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. We'll get to our sizzling topic, Entrenched Antisemitism in the Democratic Party. That's part 2, in about 15 minutes after these pre-mono topics. Our world, ladies and gentlemen, continues to burn, and in so many places. Item 1, Gaza. The truth about Gaza is that it was a deserted way station on the road to Egypt when it was built up and populated not by any Palestinian or Arab, but by Albanians under the Albanian general Muhammad Ali Pasha, the Turkish general who became the de facto ruler of Egypt from 1805 to 1848. After World War I, the League of Nations mandated the entirety of Gaza into a newly formed Jewish homeland. Check the maps. In 1948, the new independent nation of Jordan invaded from Israel's east to create the West Bank, and Egypt invaded from Israel's west. Egypt seized Gaza and made it Egypt. It came into Israeli hands only after Israel defeated all those Arab armies on all sides in the Six-Day War in 1967. Israel tried to govern it, and that was impossible. Years ago, when I was in Gaza, it was considered lawless and dangerous 24/7 at that time. But in 1987, during the first Intifada, something important occurred. Hamas arose as the local branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Iran was their benefactor. When Israel completely and painfully exited the territory in 2005, the Palestinian Authority under Oslo was to take charge. but Hamas laid siege to Gaza with a brutal orgy of kidnappings, torture chambers, and executions. Anyone with an affiliation to the Palestinian Authority, which had official international Oslo Accord status, was brutally eliminated. I'm going to give you one example out of hundreds. Atta Najjar, former police officer under the Palestinian Authority, he had a mental disability, was imprisoned after he was arrested in 2009 for collaborating with Israel. Hamas broke into the prison and mercilessly killed this man as an example. Amnesty International reported from his autopsy, quote, "There were marks of torture and bullet shots on his body. His arms and legs were broken." I'm quoting. "His body was smashed and riddled with about 30 bullets. He had slaughter marks around his neck, marks of knives, and from behind the head, there was no brain." I'm quoting, folks. "Empty. It was difficult for us to carry him. He was heavy like when you put meat in a bag. No bones. His bones were all smashed," close quote. Hamas went on to spawn a monstrous cradle-to-grave killing society that glorifies torture, murder, terrorism, and martyrdom. Freed hostage Tal Shoham revealed that his captors and even his torturers were former teachers and lawyers. I again assert there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. The ceasefire with Israel, just proclaimed, was not even 48 hours old before Hamas crawled out of their rat holes to again mass murder, ISIS style, any civilian dissenters. Ladies and gentlemen, these satanic monsters, which are now condemned throughout the Arab and civilized world, that's the civilized world exempting, of course, the rarefied halls of Harvard, Columbia, and Georgetown, these people will never willingly disarm. They have already officially declared there is no peace right now. Quote, "merely a hudna," or that's a temporary military ceasefire to allow them to regroup and rearm. The latest intel is that Hamas has recruited brigades of new youthful killers. Before October 7, Hamas wielded 30,000 plus. Now, after just a few days of rest, they have reconstituted to 20,000 strong. They continue to draw upon unlimited weapons stored in deep tunnel alcoves 3 and 4 levels down, and about 25% of their tunnels remain intact and usable. I don't know what kind of ghouls keep dead bodies as ransom, and even now Hamas is delivering only 1 or 2 of the daily murdered Jewish corpses they have from captivity. Some will never come back. I have heard that the peace deal that Trump engineered was yet another masterstroke, this one to get the living hostages back. But make no mistake, it will take a full generation, as in Nazi Germany, to rehabilitate the population. The next phase of this conflict will see a new rehabilitation zone controlled by Israel and a simultaneous push to eradicate the final vestiges of the armed Hamas killing force that exists beyond the yellow line. Hence, we are not at the precipice of peace in Gaza. We are instead at the staging ground for the beginning of the end of an ISIS force right next door. Approved fighting will resume shortly. Item 2. Great Britain joins Canada as a failing state which shall be subsumed by Islamists and a compliant establishment. I now report that on August 29 of this year, a Jewish attorney in London was arrested by the police as he was monitoring an outrageous pro-Palestinian rally in front of the Israeli embassy in London. It's a beautiful 2-story antique brown building on a highly secure and protected lane that I have visited several times. The Jewish lawyer in question, whose name is being withheld by me, was arrested for antagonizing the protesters. And what was the means of antagonism? He was apparently wearing a 1-inch Star of David around his neck, which the protesters found upsetting. This lawyer was held for 10 hours under Section 14 of the Public Order Act. His hands were shackled behind his back, and he was questioned at length at Hammersmith Police Station by robbery detectives recruited for the special task to ask why he was wearing a Jewish star in public. He was only released at 4:30 a.m. the next day, and he remains under bail and investigation at this moment. London police denied the lawyer was arrested for wearing a Star of David. I quote, "The claim that this man was arrested for wearing a Star of David necklace is not true. He was arrested for allegedly, repeatedly breaching Public Order Act conditions that were in place to keep opposing protest groups apart," close quote. But the footage of the midnight interview has been obtained. They're lying. I will post it on the homepage for this episode. Eve will do it right after this show, and it will run in the edited version, which will be out in about a month. The footage is clear. The detectives are clearly and repeatedly asking about his necklace, the one with the 1-inch Star of David. Just weeks ago on Yom Kippur, 2 people died when a Manchester synagogue was attacked by a guy called Jihad al-Shami. That's his first name, Jihad. And yes, he was out on bail at the time, bail for rape. 5 mainly Muslim MPs have officially asked the British government to declare war on Israel. Community leaders in Great Britain say it will soon become unsafe and illegal for Jews to be Jewish in Great Britain. We're not talking about black hats and prayer shawls. We're talking about 1-inch Stars of David. Folks, I refer you to my last episode, Second Holocaust, my series on the Second Holocaust, and Kristallnacht 2.0. Please, please make me wrong, because I can't bear the thought of being right again. And now this brings us to the topic of the day, anti-Semitism, entrenched in the Democratic Party. It's part 2. Part 1 ran in May of 2021, when the squad led by AOC and Ilhan Omar, etc., had clearly expanded into a broad squadron of Jew-hating, Israel-hating anti-Semites and fellow traveling acolytes in Congress. Today, a few years on, the Democrat Party has been swallowed up completely by the radical anti-Semitic and anti-Israel left. But first, before another word, save your chats. Let's get this both side things out of the way. Clearly, we all see anti-Semitism and anti-Israel agitation in the Republican Party, and by big names. We start with Tucker Carlson, who is now being referred to by detractors as Tucker Qatarson. That's because Qatar is the biggest social and government influencer on record. Beginning in 2016, when Donald Trump was first elected president, Qatar has invested $250 million on 88 FARA-registered lobbying and public relations firms. This includes such prominent Republicans as education guru Bill Bennett and previously employed now U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, both when these were in private life. From January 21 to June 25, Qatar's agents scored 627 in-person meetings with political contacts in the United States, according to the filings, more than any other foreign lobbyist on the planet. One of Qatar's lobbyists is Lumen 8 Advisors, LLC. That's Lumen with the number 8. They receive $180,000 every month from the Qatar embassy for, quote, providing media and communication coaching and consulting services, close quote. Lumen's records show that it was them that engineered a fabulous and strangely unbelievable 2-part interview between Tucker Carlson and the Prime Minister of Qatar himself, Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani. That was in March of this year. That interview received more than 6 million views on X and YouTube, and in it, Carlson does a very fine job of robustly praising the terrorist-supporting country of Qatar. In the process, Tucker has turned into an anti-Israel buffoon, spouting all sorts of baseless innuendo. We also have Steve Bannon, who vacillates between being a supporter of Israel and belittling the Israeli-American alliance. Candace Owens is nuts and now suggests Donald Trump murdered Charlie Kirk in addition to all her other Israel conspiracies. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who discovered the Jewish lasers in outer space. Gee, I thought we had those covered up real good. She lately spouts nutty stuff about Israel and the Israel-American alliance. And I left out plenty of others. But here's the point. Although there is a fringe of Republicans, and a very vocal one, that bellows traditional anti-Semitic and anti-Israel tropes, they are a fringe, a loud fringe, but a fringe. Nothing they do or say, at least for now, is gaining traction with the 99% of Republicans who embrace and support the Jewish community and Israel and prove it every day, every hour of every day, with muscular displays of support and activist help. And this spans both officials in the government and the average man or woman in the street, in the field, in the factory, and in the country. And this brings us to the Democrats and the Democratic Party, where anti-Semitism, anti-Israel animus, and outright opposition to the American way of life is now entrenched, dominant, grassroots, and a dark force which has swallowed up the Democratic Party whole and controls it as a dark force that will help usher in a second Holocaust if they regain power. Let me explain. Most people do not have a full understanding of the Democratic Party past, present, and future. The Republicans were originally known as the abolitionists. The Democrats are the oldest, most violence-prone, racist-stained political party in the history of the world. The Democrats are responsible for British chattel slavery being retained and expanded in this country. Their armed wing was known as the Confederacy, and they started the Civil War when slavery was defeated by Republican Abraham Lincoln. He was then assassinated by a Democrat, ushering in a resurgence in democratic racism. That led to Jim Crow laws that inhibited the black vote, black educational access, and black equality for the 14th Amendment. After the Confederacy was defeated, the armed terror militia of the Democrats arose, and that was the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, which lynched blacks in public executions from Alabama to Minnesota. Don't think it was just the South. They became the Dixiecrats that opposed the civil rights laws, voting rights laws, and it took President Kennedy invoking the Insurrection Act in 1963 to plow through Governor George Wallace, blocking the school front door to allow black students in. The Insurrection Act has been invoked, by the way, several dozen times by prior presidents to enforce federal law. I think we'll see that soon this year as well. The Democrats were not only the racists that created America's racist record with Africans, but they created the Trail of Tears that destroyed the defeated Indian nations and their families, forced to move from place to place in despair. Democratic judges such as Oliver Wendell Holmes opened the floodgates to eugenic genocide in this country when the Supreme Court ruled that 3 generations of imbeciles was enough, ushering in 60,000 forced surgical sterilizations because these people did not match the white, blonde, and blue-eyed stereotype idealized by the eugenics movement. It was a Democratic Confederacy-loving President Woodrow Wilson that re-enlivened the Ku Klux Klan in the 20th century. It was Wilson who was persuaded by the National City Bank to invade Haiti and assist the French in their rape of the Haitian economy that has created the island mess we know today. Forget not that it was Democrats that put Japanese Americans in concentration camps during World War II. It was Democratic President Franklin Delano Roosevelt that allowed the Nazis to expand commercially to repay Wall Street for Versailles era debt. It was FDR that did not lift a finger to save one Jew in Europe. He bombed not one railroad track. He liberated not one concentration camp, nor did he instruct his consulates in Europe to admit any Jewish refugees from the Nazis. The blood is on your hands. And this comes from the still beating hearts of Indians, Africans, Haitians, Jews, and so many others. Yeah, as my friend in the Democratic Party tells me, he's a great historian, but he told me we don't lynch people anymore. But today, this Democratic Party that snookered my parents, that snookered unions, that snookered me for decades, and that continues to snooker the golden calf Jews who would rather vote for their own destruction than see beyond their own mental turbulence about Donald Trump. Whatever you were when I was growing up, when my parents were learning English, you have changed. Today, the party is not just elected officials in Congress. Don't make that mistake. And the majority of them no longer support Israel, which represents half the Jews in the world, more than half. The party is the state and local elected officials. The party is its people, its base, and their agitational minority movements, such as the Democratic Socialists of America and their adherents, with at least 4 leading members in Congress, led by AOC, the next presidential Democratic candidate from the Democrats. As I predicted years ago, the party is also its media force, led by MSNBC, CNN, ABC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and a fleet of other media outlets. It's Hollywood, led by De Niro and many other A-listers. I've stopped watching their movies. The heck with them. And there's the radical left that believes violence is the only way to achieve their goals. Everyone is talking about the rise in rhetoric around political violence in the Democratic Party. The latest poll shows a full 28% of the party believes violence and indeed killing Trump can be justified. The Democrat running for Attorney General in Virginia, Jay Jones, openly chatted that the Speaker of the House should get 2 bullets in the head so he could piss on his grave, and then his 2 children should die in their mother's arms. And yet the entire leadership continues to endorse this man's candidacy right now, today. A Maine Democrat adorned his body with a tattoo echoing the Nazi SS death head that he says he got in a drunken moment in Croatia. Croatia, the land of Nazi devils known as the Ustashi, who used to wear eyeballs on their necklaces. Just this morning, a Texas Democrat, Jolon Jones, running for state office, says that if Republicans go low, she'll go into the gutter. And she made a gesture of a slash across the throat like this, and she said she would go for the neck. What the heck is that? Now Democrats are carrying protest posters declaring they are Antifa. That's A-U-N-T, like your auntie, with Tifa. The radical left celebrates the murder of a healthcare CEO with a shot in the back, lionizing his killer Luigi Mangione as some sort of a handsome dude. The Democrats constantly voted against Israel. Blinken and Biden threatened to cut off all arms to Israel if it fought back against the October 7th massacres. That's when Bibi made his famous statement, "We'll fight with our fingernails." Even now, today, the polls say only 10% of Democrats support Israel. 10%. That's the old guy. That 10% is the old guy. He's getting ready to retire. The Democrat-dominated National Education Association, the NEA, just circulated a map to all teachers, erasing Israel, replacing it with Palestine, and a Holocaust guide, erasing Jews from Hitler's genocide in their definition of the Holocaust, and they just broke off all relations with the Anti-Defamation League. The Democratic base hates Jews and hates Israel, even if that base is populated by golden calf Jews who think the train thunders down the track for someone else, not them. Plus, the Democrats are now taken over by socialists. They don't believe in the American way of life. A new NBC poll out this week confirms that 66% of Democrats have a better view of socialism than capitalism. This is even though socialism has never worked in any country, has never not been brutal and violent. It preaches revolution and overthrow as a central tenet and cannot work once they finish pilfering other people's money. And this brings us to the upcoming vote for mayor in New York City. Democrat socialist Zoran Mandami, a Shiite, Jew-hating, Israel-hating, slicker than slick smiling socialist that promises to arrest Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu if he tries to visit the United Nations. A socialist that refused on Fox to ask Hamas to lay down their arms. A Jew hater who stands proudly with Islamists who stand with those who have bombed New York City. Is he an outlier? Oh no, he has been endorsed by the Democratic governor, Kathy Hochul, and the other leading Democrats in the area. 850 rabbis and cantors in New York and New Jersey, 850, have signed a letter, quote, a rabbinic call to action defending the Jewish future, close quote, condemning Mamdani, who hates police, capitalism, Jews, and the Israeli flag. They'll be coming through Queens to pull it down if he is elected, and even if he is not, which he will be. By the time this episode is edited, he'll be in Gracie Mansion. AOC is going to make him Secretary of State should she win in the next round. More than that, you will see an entire armada of local Islamists, socialists, and others hijacking the Democratic nameplate, running for every local office you can imagine, from city council to statewide office, worming their way into the political ecosphere, rising through the ranks until they achieve senior dominance, preparing to take over in 1 or 2 electoral cycles before the next decade turns in, as if we let them. As usual, I was compelled to leave out, ladies and gentlemen, 99% of what I promised myself I would say, but I must now yield to our panelists, both strong voices on democratic issues. The first is crisis manager Juda Engelmayer, who knows a crisis as well as any man. Judah, how precarious is the situation for America and for Jews? Take the mic, Judah.
Edmund, thank you very much for that introduction. It's difficult for me to add anything to what you just said because the way you make it sound, we're in turmoil, and we are. You know, I see we're not just seeing a mere spike in anti-Semitism. We're witnessing a rebranding wrapped in democratic language of human rights, anti-colonialism. Traditional anti-Semitic tropes have found new platforms like DEI offices, faculty lounges, and now viral TikTok feeds. It's been all over the place, and you can't avoid it. It's not just about hate, it's political strategy. It's been foreign funding for 2 generations, which we can't ignore. Qatar, Saudi Arabia have been seeding this and slowly infusing it into our education system, the minds of our young. They spent the past 40 years doing this. And now it's a calculated campaign to delegitimize Jewish identity and Israel's right to exist. And as we see, Zoran Mandani, take him for example. His popularity in New York, and it's been polls and poll after poll has shown, is not because they believe he's a socialist. It's because he doesn't like Israel. He's taken on the anti-Israel stand, and that's what's propelled him. Because being a socialist doesn't merely do it in New York. He's a star within the Democratic Socialists of America, which is a big problem for us. The growing influence in New York and the broader Democratic establishment is the point where even a Chuck Schumer now, as our president now calls him, Palestinian Schumer, Chuck Schumer he used to be the show mayor for the Jewish community. He's afraid to open up and support Jews in Israel now because a guy like Mandami is so powerful. He doesn't want to get unelected himself, and that's what he's afraid of, looking out for his own back rather than for his own people, which is a little bizarre for me to absorb that. But that's all because of the power that Mandami and the Democratic Socialists have had. But there's one that you can't ignore. Mandami, like you said, is not a socialist. If he were just a socialist, he wants to give everybody everything, share the world with everything. It's fine. Socialism has failed, and we've seen that time and time again. There's no place where socialism has really succeeded. But Mandami is using socialism to capture the minds of Americans with American ideals who feel that they have not been on the right side of the American dream, or they don't want to work as hard as their parents do, and they want everything for nothing. So it's an appealing message. But he's an Islamist in disguise. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And, he openly talks, promotes Hamas, says Hamas shouldn't lay down their weapons. He openly says Israel doesn't have a right to be a Jewish state, given opportunity after opportunity to explain himself, and it just doesn't do it. And, the silence from other Democrats speaks volumes. I think that we have to look at it. The only one who's speaking up is John Fetterman, and now they're threatening to primary him because he's not a good Democrat anymore, because he doesn't represent that side. Madani is a case study, and the performance of anti-Zionism has become political currency. And I think you've talked about that as well. And it's it's disturbing. I wrote a piece about Zohar Madani that goes back to May, talking about how he's an actual radical, he's an Islamist in disguise. And everyone can read that later on. What we've seen over the past 2.5 years has really been what Qatar has been building for the last 40 years. It's, the soft power, buying silence, manufacturing outrage. It's all been by paying money to schools, universities, putting in the faculty heads and program heads who have gradually been changing the curriculum and teaching people to what we see right now. I mean, is it a wonder that the biggest problems we have are on college campuses, unions, and organized type organizations? A lot of it's been funded. Take a look at trace their funding and trace where where a lot of that input's coming from. It's DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. It's everybody, but the Jews are never included in DEI. We're the smallest group in the world, smallest minority group in the world, but we don't count as diversity, equity, inclusion. Go figure. Why is that? Because it's been programmed. It's scary out there right now. And then, as you said, it's not just the Democratic Party. We do have our Candace Owens. We have our Tucker Carlsons. And, Candace believes that Jews killed Charlie Kirk. Tucker Carlson believes Jews are the root of all evil. Some of it, I believe, is because they get a lot of money. And I know Tucker's funded by Qatar. I don't know whether Candace is funded by Qatar or not. I don't know if that's the case. But obviously, she gets immense viewership and advertising from a base that wants to hear what she has to say. And I don't know if she actually believes this stuff, or maybe now she does, or she was doing it for opportunism, but it's poisonous. It's poisonous and it's hurtful. And we have it now on all sides. And I think the Democratic Party is far worse. And, anyone who doesn't like Donald Trump, I got to tell you, he is holding the line and pushing back. And he is really a guardian right now against anti-Semitism and against anti-Zionism and supporting Israel. And even those Jews out there who parade around with the Palestinians and the Jewish Voice for Peace, they should know that without Trump in the way, they'll be the first ones mowed over. First ones mowed over.
That's right. And you said it well. And we know that because on October 7th, it was the peaceniks that were the first ones mowed over. What emerges from my remarks and from yours, which coalesced together, is this is not this radical left that has been taken over. This is not one group or one idea. This has been budding over since about the 1960s, since the radicals from the Berkeley days. And it's been hijacked and it's been powered and steered by the Qataris, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Islamists who will work with anybody. They'll work with the Queers for Palestine. They'll work with trans, even though the Queers from Palestine, if they ever got to Gaza, would be ushered up to the first rooftop to be thrown over. Everybody.
Useful idiots. We call them useful idiots.
Useful idiots. That's exactly what they are. So let me just ask you straight out. Mamdani's going to be elected, correct?
The polls show that. I'm hoping that there's still some chance.
All right.
And Josh is laughing there.
If Mamdani is elected, what happens the next day?
The next day, you'll have people scared and worried. Nothing's really going to happen until January 2nd. But you're going to have a lot of frayed nerves, a lot of people upset. I think the real estate in Bergen County, New Jersey is going to start going up. My house is going to be worth double the price soon. I should appreciate that. But he's going to change policies. He claims he's on the side of the police. He's really not. He'll make some amends, make it look like he is, but he'll remove some of their funding. He'll definitely either cancel or reduce in scope the Israel parade, things like that. You will see him. He will not go to synagogues and speak unless it's a Satmar venue where they just care about their funding and their money, and they don't care about Israel. And that's how he'll claim he supports Jews, by showing himself at Hasidim. But I mean, through from as a mayor, he doesn't have all that much power to affect national policy. But you will start seeing an infusion of his ideology into other politics, into other campaigns around the country. If he does well, others in blue cities will do well as well if they follow his lead. And then that'll creep up, like you said. If AOC becomes president, he becomes a national player, and then if he could affect more policy, and you'll start seeing people like that come to rise. If he rises right now, you will see a lot more people try to, and some will succeed, and eventually it'll get into our national sphere.
Thank you, Judah. Now we turn to a distinguished Democratic strategist, a key player in the Gore campaign. We bring on Josh Block. Josh, what say you?
Well, I wish I had something warm and fuzzy to say, but I got to say, as you alluded, I spent my political career, so much as I was involved in politics, working to elect Democrats. I don't recognize most of the Democratic Party today. I feel alienated from what the party represents. It's a disgusting cesspool for the most part. And actually, a lot of these people, frankly, aren't Democrats. You mentioned Mamdani. He called themselves Democratic Socialists. Bernie Sanders is a socialist. As far as I'm concerned, being a socialist or a communist and running on the Democratic Party line isn't politics, it's subversion. And that's what we see going on around the country. Mamdani, was 26 years old when he sought American citizenship. He'd been in the United States since he was 8. Why did he wait so long to become an American citizen? And by the way, is he American now? He stands for the destruction of everything America represents. The answer is because in 2018, when he sought citizenship, he was being trained by Linda Sarsour. And Linda Sarsour is Muslim Brotherhood Front organization here in the United States. So he's part of a tradition or an effort that seeks to destroy not just capitalism, but Western civilization. And the people that he speaks in rallies with talk about killing politicians and destroying people. Rashida Tlaib speaks at pro-Palestinian conferences that talk about destroying empire. They mean America. They mean the West. And they talk about it over and over and over again. They talk about using violence. They talk about suicide bombing. They talk about the need to destroy America. And he smiles. He's very chatty. He's, when you watch him, it's disarming. That's what's so dangerous about it. The ideas he represents are anathema to freedom and really to what Democrats in the United States are supposed to stand for. It's really disturbing. I would add something else. Like Judah said, well, you asked what's going to happen? Well, the populations of Florida and Texas are going to go way up. I think a lot of people who live in New York are going to leave for places where there's, no income tax and Jews are protected, states like Florida and Texas. And I don't blame them. It's a serious concern. And maybe Cuomo will win. Maybe the people voting for Sliwa will come to their right minds and cast a ballot for Mario Cuomo's son for the governor, for Andrew Cuomo, and rescue the situation. But I'm concerned that won't happen. And I think something Judah alluded to, which is the spread of these radical policies, frankly, it's a dream come true for the Republican Party, because running against these ideas is going to be running against them is going to be very popular in the vast majority of the United States. People are disaffected. It's true. They're economically alienated. They feel dispossessed. They don't like the cost of living, but they're not going to be in favor of someone like this who pals around with, campaigns with people who were unindicted co-conspirators in the 9/11 attacks. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. That's a fact. So that it is deeply concerning. And then, of course, for Jews in America, it's an extremely worrisome time because you have these people on the left, the far left, who endorse globalize the Intifada, which means kill the Jews. They literally scream, "We are Hamas," that you take them at their word. And then on the right of the political spectrum these days, you have the people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and the people that they platform on their shows, Holocaust deniers, Nick Fuentes, who's moved from the absolute radical fringe. Again, just as quickly, you have a Democratic guy who's running for the Senate nomination in Maine who has an SS tattoo on his chest, and the Obama administration podcast bros are out there pretending like it's no big deal. Oh, just a tattoo. He didn't know what it was. Meanwhile, the guy's been out there throwing his arm up in the air talking about his Nazi tattoo over the years. He said things at least as recently as 2021 that were completely anti-Semitic and vile. So suddenly we're now supposed to believe the guy didn't know what he was talking about. Meanwhile, on the right, these networks of podcasters are platforming Holocaust deniers and saying, the Jews invented COVID and the Jews control America and Israel controls the White House and Netanyahu is the boss. Just absurd, obscene things. Today, recently, Candace Owen moved away from the Jews killed Charlie Kirk to Trump killed Charlie Kirk. These are insane people. And what is the connective tissue between them and the funding in Qatar? Well, we don't have all the bank receipts, but we certainly know that all of these podcasters have their ad networks linked. They're all the advertising, all the money that these shows make are served up by the same ad firms. So how is it that these firms are getting the money? Who's buying the ads? How are they funding these people? And it's no doubt that they're doing it to make money. And some of them believe the anti-Semitic and horrifying things that they say. So for the state of the Democratic Party is awful. The state of America with the polarization is terrible. These are disturbing trends. On the other hand, of course, Edwin, Israel is more secure in the world than it's been in decades. It's destroyed Hezbollah. Hamas is on its last legs. Syria has changed and is an enemy of Iran. Iran itself has been largely defanged, although that is continuing to be a concern. They're trying to reconstitute their missiles and their nuclear program, as you know. But, things are on the upswing in certain areas, but we have to do a much better job of, controlling our ability to make the argument, the facts, to educate people that what's going on. One last thing I'll say, Edwin, which is the effort by Qatar and the enemies of Israel and America to undermine our society has extended into the evangelical Christian community, where they're now targeting evangelicals with a resurgent, repackaged version of replacement theology, which attempts to suggest that the Jews and Israel are a fallen nation, out of covenant, it's called, with God, which means that Christians have no reason to support Israel. It's an attempt to destroy the most meaningful, the most important pillar of American societal, American political support for Israel. And these threats, these dangers are extraordinarily potent. And we need to wake up. The evangelical community needs to wake up and recognize the danger, communicate it to its communities, and call this out for what it is, which is satanic. And these are real problems, Edwin, and they're not going away anytime soon.
People keep talking about on January 1st, when Mandami takes office, that there'll be an exodus and there'll be a collapse of finance. They want that collapse. They want New York, Portland, and the other cities to collapse so they can run roughshod and declare chop zones. Now, I'd like to add, since you're an astute political observer, I want you to tell us what's going to happen during the midterms.
Well, at the moment, I think we're likely to see Democrats win more races than they lose around the country. I don't know whether they'll take the majority in the House, but it's certainly, despite the efforts of redistricting around the country to make the states as representative of their constituents and their citizens, their voters, as possible by drawing representative and competitive districts. I think that the polling that I've seen in recent weeks shows that Democrats have an advantage going into the midterm election. Part of that is because of propaganda. Some of it has been the reframing around this government shutdown. Some of it has to do with anger around the propaganda about foreign policy in Israel. But we'll have to wait and see what happens.
So is there a chance that they will retake one of the two chambers?
And there's always a chance, Edwin. The margin in the House is very narrow, but I tend to think that it will remain the way it is. But it's certainly possible that Democrats could take over the House.
All right, let's go to questions. Thank you very much, Josh. So first question from the Watch Party in the Villages. When did the Democratic Party change to be anti-Semitic? Well, I think the question is framed in a certain way. There were many in the Democratic Party, since they were Dixiecrats, they hated blacks, they hated Jews because Jews stood up for blacks. But I think what we're talking about is the modern era. And the shift that was in my lifetime was with Barack Obama. Barack Obama hated Israel. He was an anti-colonialist, and he is the one that endowed Iran with the ability to make a bomb. He is the one that engineered this massive international JCPOA treaty that said you can't make a bomb for 10 years, and then you can make one. And that was 10 years ago. It's 2025, and here we see that Israel and Trump had to act to take them out. So
Edwin, your point is correct. And I think one other thing that Obama did, which was mainstream the argument that Jews who supported a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, Jews and Americans who opposed Iran getting a nuclear weapon and opposed his policies were anti-American and were foreign and were to be rejected. And he and Ben Rhodes, who ran their echo chamber and pushed this messaging, along with Colin Kahl and other members of the administration who tried to single out Jews and disenfranchise Jews and stigmatize Jewish participation in the political process. Whose side are you on? Barack Obama literally said to someone in the Oval Office when they suggested that airing differences with Israel in public was damaging. And what have we seen under President Trump, frankly, which is that the closer the United States and Israel are, the more support he provides to Israel, the stronger Israel is in these conflicts, the more likely it is that the forces of evil will compromise and make peace. And come to terms with Israel, which is how we saw all of the hostages released in one fell swoop a few weeks ago, which under the Biden administration, which was largely run on foreign policy by Obamites, was not what was going to happen. Not going to happen.
Now, you have a great insight into AIPAC. If Obama was this guy that you and I both know that he was, that Alan Dershowitz has finally declared his former friend to be an enemy of the Jewish people, why did AIPAC bring this guy out on a throne with their arms around him and try to get the American Jewish world to get behind Barack Obama?
Because AIPAC does what AIPAC needs to do to continue raising money, continue having influence, and that's being about every party, about everybody, and trying to get everyone to like them. That's what AIPAC used to do. They're actually changed their ways a little bit, but AIPAC is not supposed to be a single party organization, and they were trying to show universality that everybody supports Israel.
Thank you, Judah, for saving me.
Yeah, because I know that Josh did not want to answer that question. From the Watch Party in Newton, Massachusetts, that's a stronghold there. Can the second Holocaust be averted? I'm going to answer that. Answer, no, it cannot. But it can be confronted. It can be minimized. It can be minimized and confronted and contained in ways we could have confronted it in the 30s and 40s had America been aggressive. Judah, what do you think about that?
Well, depending on what form you think the next Holocaust comes in, if you think it's going to be a repeat of Nazi Germany being shipped on trains into a camp and an oven, I don't think it's going to look like that. But I do agree that it can be averted. In some countries, in some nations, you see it in Canada, you see it in London right now, it's coming in Paris. I think that there will be dark times. And I'm hoping we can keep that away from us with powerful friends that we have, and if we keep up our friends. I think Jews have to be careful also what they do and how they treat people as well. I've written about this before, and I say that we can't be blind and ignorant, but we also can't be only about ourselves. If we know that Israel is a touch point, we have to be very supportive of America also, and can't give these enemies the ability to believe that we don't care about our own country and we're just living here to make sure we send money and support Israel only. We have to be as patriotic as anybody else, and not just in acting. We have to believe it and do it in order for us to maintain that power here.
Well, I would say that the second Holocaust, remembering that the first Holocaust was discussed for 6 years before they turned into the killing phase, we're not going to see trains going to gas chambers in the United States. We're going to see trains going to ships on the coast and shipping everyone to some central place like Israel, which is what the Nazis tried to do, and then try to get them there. That was the original thought. Josh, I turn to you. This question from Newton, Mass. Can the second Holocaust be averted? What say you?
Well, I think the real question is the Jew hate that we see on the streets of Europe, of the United States, in response certainly to what's happened in Israel and Gaza, can it be confronted? Can these efforts be described by the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters in Qatar to destroy the link between evangelicals and the United States and Israel work? And I think the answer is that it needs to be confronted, and it can be stopped. It needs to be called out. It needs to be aggressively combated. And I think part of the thing is that the clandestine nature of the money flows and the effort to buy off these influencers to coerce our political leadership with money and business deals and inject funds into the economy in ways that are untraceable and unseen can these things be exposed so people are educated and aware of what's being done, so that there is shame created, so that there's resistance to these ideas? And frankly, it's not always about Jews, the pushback against these ideas. It's about Western civilization. And I think this is kind of what you see in the United Kingdom now, with the pushback against the Islamization of and the radical Islamization of their society. I saw today footage from Newsweek of a Gazan immigrant who's moved to Montreal with her family 6 months ago, saying, F white people, F you, F all you people, because of Halloween decorations. This kind of rejection of American society, of British society, of French society, of Western society, German society, that is rooted in tolerance and freedom of speech and our traditions, it needs to be confronted, because it's not just a danger to Jews. Jews are the canary in the coal mine. It's a danger to Western civilization. I think, again, to bring it back to the beginning, it's why someone like Zoran Mamdani is so dangerous. He's the smiling, polite face of the Muslim Brotherhood and extremism that seeks not just to alienate and destroy Jews and sever America's relationship with Israel, because it serves this multilateral internationalist worldview where Israel must be condemned. And on the right, it's to sever that relationship between Israel and the United States, because they believe in a hyper-isolationist America-only perspective. These things need to be confronted and called out so that we can save society and save America, because precisely as Juda's alluding, American Jews are the most patriotic, the most American-loving segment of our society, because we know what it means to be stateless. We know what it means to be persecuted. And we love this country because it affords the freedom and the ability to build our lives like Jews have never seen around the world. And of course, Israel's existence is central to that, because without it, we don't have a backstop.
So well said. Our last question I'm going to take is from Jimmy in Los Angeles. He's asked a question before. If the Democrats are so bad, why is the country half Democrat? Judah first.
I think the answer is because people are people, and there are plenty of people out there. Listen, my father is one of these people, and I know he was a child of the 60s, and he's a bleeding heart liberal, and he just doesn't want to believe anything Trump says, even though he sees the writing on the wall, and he just can't get himself out of that mode. He understands it. He knows it. He doesn't like Mandami, thinks it's going to be bad for New York, and he understands, he rationally sees that, but can't bring himself to say, okay, I've finally given up, and now I have to go to the other side.
That's right. Inertia, Judah, inertia, and the unwillingness to abandon and admit that the things that you've said and believed for so long are fading away and they're changing. It's a very difficult confrontation. And, you don't have to become a Republican. You can just be post-partisan. You just have to say, you know what, I'm going to make the decisions that are best for me and my family and my country. But it's inertia. It's just this inability to break away from what has been and just make a slight course correction. It's sad, but it's true.
I want everyone to write down those words from Josh. Post-partisan, okay? It takes a lot.
Post-partisan inertia.
Post-partisan inertia. All right, it's 3 words. It takes
Those are separate concepts.
All right.
Break the inertia to become post-partisan.
All right. So it takes a lot to recognize that maybe things have changed. But ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, over a half century, things are going to change. And that's exactly what has occurred. And right now, we're out of time. So I want you to hold for my closing word of wisdom, just 2 minutes away. But first, I want to thank my extremely knowledgeable and gracious guests, Josh Block and Juda Engelmayer. Plus, I want to thank my talented international team, including Eve in Jersey, Lance in Michigan, Richard in the Philippines, as well as many others in numerous additional cities around the world. I'll see everyone back here in 2 weeks at 3 p.m. You want to be a friend of the Edwin Black Show? Guys, I really need help. Go to the edwinblackshow.com/support. Don't be afraid. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Consult my events page at edwinblack.com. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, iTunes Books, Google Books, Kobo, or Audible.com platform in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 325 book editions, such as IBM the Holocaust and my latest Israel Strikes Iran. You want an autographed copy? Hit edwinblack.com and click books. Get access alerts to participate live in future shows at theedwinblackshow.com. You'll see a much enhanced and truly exquisitely produced version of this show and the prior episodes by subscribing on our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show and click that notification button like tens of thousands of others have. Follow me at Edwin Black Book as well as Facebook. And now for my closing word of wisdom. If you're afraid, you're smart. But if you're brave, you're using your head. I'm zooming out from our nation's capital. Bless all of you and pray for all that is unfolding before our very eyes.